the assignment, but it's really, really awesome and inspiring, and I've been loving reading you've done. I want to also acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of the Benaki people who have stewarded this land and continue to steward this land across generations and time. And so I think, especially for those of you who did your work in the Northeast and have really grown in love and appreciation of this place, it's just important to recognize that these are the lands that we're on. And so I just want to start off with that. And without further ado, I'll introduce our first presenter of the night. But before I do that, if you didn't have a chance to read my email, Emily LaForest will be timing you. So you will have someone, you don't have to keep track of your own time. So there will be a slight, gentle but encouraging little alarm that will go off at 3 minutes, but feel free to wrap up your thoughts. You don't need to like stop talking at that time. We'll just gently tell you like, okay, time around the time. If you really need more time, I think we can see it like 30 seconds to a minute, maybe. But I think try and stay as close as you can to the timer. Yeah, and that's what I've got. Are there any questions before we get started? Anything anyone's wondering about how you'll present? Okay. Well, let's get going then. We're going to start off with Sandi, and I'm going to get to your slide, Sandi. Thanks for starting us off.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a little issue, but. Okay. I kind of, yeah. I'll figure it out. Okay, so I need to. Okay, so my name is Sandi, and this summer I work with the Drinking Water Division, which is in the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is under the umbrella of the Agency of Natural Resources. My supervisor was Erin Stewart, and she's a state hydrogeologist. So my mission was reviewing spas, and that's really the picture I had in my head the whole time. But really, that's not what I was doing, fortunately. I was reviewing source protection areas, which are mapped around public water wells or springs, and they help with evaluating contamination risks. So the spas look like this. This example is from Georgia, the town of Georgia and Vermont, and they have a spa here with 2 wells. So this is 1 well. So if contamination occurs within this zone, you can be sure that the well is contaminated. If contamination occurs here in zone 3, then contamination is possible and the risks are lower, definitely. Okay, so the process, what did I do? I spent a lot of time going back and forth between the digital archives of the division, looking at old maps and a lot of long documents, and working with ArcGIS Pro, making sure or ensuring that the spas were correct, or editing or creating new ones in ArcGIS Pro. And this is the result. When my edits were done, they were published in the Natural Resources Atlas. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen it already. It's really useful to know more about water quality and soils and contamination. And speaking of contaminants, this is another project I worked on. And the idea was to combine the sites of that were contaminated with forever chemicals, with layers that represented environmental justice criteria. And the impetus for this project is the 2022 Vermont Environmental Justice Law that, among many other things, mandates the Agency of Natural Resources to create and maintain an environmental justice screening tool. Yeah. So that was an opportunity to explore a really interesting tool, like the EJ screen that's maintained by the EPA. The Climate and Economic Justice screening tool. This one is maintained by the White House. The Vermont Social Vulnerability Index, so it's maintained by the state of Vermont, and other tools like this. Key takeaways. So first and foremost, our GIS knowledge is really, really valuable. I worked a lot with contaminants. I didn't know much. Now I want to learn more. Environmental governance, I really meant water protection by that. It must be approached from multiple angles to be effective. So I got to see only a small piece of that. And environmental justice is becoming an integral part of water protection. It was interesting. And finally, on a practical note, I worked remotely most of the time, and that was challenging. So I realized you really need to be self-disciplined, self-organized to keep going. And so I want to say thank you. I don't know if she's on, to Erin, who mentored me during the internship, and also to the Rubenstein Perennial Internship Program for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. That's where I was going. Great. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Olivia Ward.
What is Season? Season is a water engineering consultant firm. I worked in the headquarters in New York City, New York. Their model is called Water, and they primarily help their clients meet water quality and water supply goals, whether it's through designing treatment plants, supply systems, green infrastructure, restoration plans, climate resiliency, infrastructure, and my role and takeaways. So I did a lot of things. My role was planning and permitting technician, but I kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. Some of the things I did was provide research, aid, and advice in the permitting process. I worked on a lot of different projects, which was cool. I read, wrote, edited, and validated phase 1 ESA reports and desktop reviews. ESA is just environmental site assessments, and desktop group reviews are kind of just like a brief summary of that. And then I assembled commitment tables, which are just commitments that I guess the engineering department has to follow. And I did a little bit of GIS. I did GIS area of impact and mapping. That is down below. I created and conducted hydrograph analysis to assess stormwater overflows for one of their stormwater systems. I performed lake and stormwater sampling also, so I got to go out and into the field, I guess, and that was really fun. And then down there you can see my notes and the nice lake that I went to. I reviewed, organized, and managed financial data as well. And I helped to plan and map landscape architectural designs, which was really cool and interesting. And yeah. And then my importance of work. So my role in permitting is what allows for all the different engineering projects to occur. My role was to help aid and advise in the permit process. That's what allows projects to remain on a strict timeline to succeed in their buildings when completed, while also being able to preserve the environment and the natural resources and land that their projects might overlap with. And the overall picture is water is integral to everything that we as people do. So having access to clean water is vital to us as people and the community around us. As population continues to expand, freshwater supplies are limited and the challenges will continue to become greater and greater throughout the future of our water. In general, being able to contribute to the preservation, health, and safety of public waters by enabling these projects to happen felt really rewarding. So work environment highlights were definitely like the people that I was able to work with. Everybody even the higher ups were really happy and really friendly to help. Creating new bonds kind of goes along with that with the interns and higher ups. They often have like office activities and lunches where you could talk to them and ask people questions. Highlight for experiences, definitely the landscape architecture drawings. I thought that was really cool. It was actually through like activities and lunches, I got to talk with someone in the landscape architecture department, and I happened to ask if I could shadow them because I got to have a really interesting conversation with them, and that led me to the ability to partake in that. And then also GIS experience, gain experience in that. And for diversity, equity, and social justice, the staff was pretty diverse. It was also New York City, so New York City is a pretty diverse place. There was client diversity, so we didn't only work with people in New York City, we worked with people from smaller local municipalities, as well as people from like the whole New York City DEP department. And also the company structure was not really a pyramid structure. Everybody was kind of like, even like higher ups didn't feel like, oh, we're higher up. Everybody was just like, oh, ask for help. Like everybody's there to support you, which was nice. I think I forgot key takeaways, but the permitting process is a very long process. It takes a lot of time and it's very convoluted, but it's extremely important. Tips. Don't be afraid to try something new and say yes. Trying something new allows you to better problem solve, expand your knowledge, improves your adaptability, and may lead to more new opportunities. Internships are for you to learn, and by exploring new things, you can also figure out your likes and dislikes in a work environment. Always put in your full effort. It's always important to go above and beyond, and that shows initiative. And it's always best to take longer time but have better quality results. And asking questions is key. And then finally, be open to meeting new people. Your internship is what you make it. So being able to have conversations with other interns, coworkers, and current workers is really important. Thank you.
Right, Emily is going to move to that chair. So when you're looking for time, Emily will be sitting right there. She'll be giving you a 1-minute warning, and the alarm sounds like. That was my wake up alarm for a short period of time, so it's bringing me back. And we have Lindsey.
So the goal of Greenwood, it's in Colorado, is to help sick, injured, and orphaned animals and rehabilitate them so we can return them to the wild. We have veterinarians, animal care technicians, interns, and volunteers. And interns' main job is to help out the veterinary care technicians. It's about a couple thousand animals every year we rehabilitate. And there are some specific categories that Greenwood mostly does, and I'll get into those. So the first animals I worked with this summer were raccoons, and here's some pictures of them being very adorable. So the main thing I did was the youngest raccoons. We could provide like motherly care to them. So bottle fed them, send them to use the restroom, weigh them to prepare them for release. And for the older raccoons, we clean their enclosures and provide enrichment for them, so they feel more comfortable. And another thing that's big that we do is keep raccoons from habituating to people, because that comes really easily to them and we can't release them if that happens. And I learned a lot about disease prevention with raccoons because they're big rabies vectors, so we vaccinate all our raccoons before we release them. Okay, so I also worked with birds and waterfowl. For the youngest birds, it's like nestlings, and I learned how to ID birds because we do diet based on ID. So birds are either formula fed or tweezer fed based on their age. Formula feeding is kind of crazy. You insert a syringe directly into their crop. For waterfowl, we made duckweed, which is like greens and water that they eat. And I also monitored their behavior because ducks fight each other and sometimes to the death. So it can be very serious. And I also got to help do some releases with birds and waterfowl, which was really cool. Okay, so squirrels, I only got to do a little bit of them because they're mostly in the fall, but I helped prepare formula for them and fed the babies with a syringe. Here's sort of a picture of that, and also helped send them to use the restroom. And we also weighed them because we monitor weight for release. Okay, so tips for future interns, definitely get rabies vaccinated. It is optional, but you can't work with the raccoons if you don't. And it's really, really fun to work with the raccoons. They're super adorable and very, very silly. One did drop a dead rat on my head. That was not a highlight of the summer, but if you work earlier in the summer, you got to work with the youngest raccoons, which is like a little more crazy and you can learn a lot more. So definitely do that. And the longer internships let you work with more species. And also they have sort of informational nights and events that are just very helpful because a lot of times in the actual workplace, you don't get to talk with the staff that much because you have to be quiet around the animals. And then just a quick diversity, equity, inclusion. Also, here's some bobcat cubs and a fox I got to work with this summer. Well, we have volunteer drivers, so if someone can't drop an animal off at the center, they'll pick it up. If they have too many kids or too busy, we put pronouns on all of our name tags, and we accept all capable visitors. And then final impacts and releases. Here's me releasing some ducks and some raccoons that we released. So hundreds of animals are released from us every year. And most animals that are brought in are results of human impacts. For example, the mom raccoon gets hit by a car. Birds' nests are in trees that get cut down. So it's a really great way to give back to animals and that people have. Yeah, thank you.
All right, next up we have Ian Thompson.
Hello, I'm Ian. This summer was forestry tech field system in Tony D'Amato's research lab. You can get a slide. Yeah, so if you don't know Tony, he's the chair of the forestry department, super helpful guy. Great to talk to, and he also heads the applied silviculture and forest ecology lab here. So the research that we were doing was in collaboration with Vermont ANR, the Nature Conservancy, and Vermont Land Trust. So the map on the top right shows the list of where the 9 different sites are of those different collaborations. And this research is really important. It's used for informing forest managers regarding regeneration response for their forests that they're managing, investigate strategies to combat things like ash borer, other invasive species, stuff like that. And most importantly, develop strategies for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And on the bottom here are, those are just all the plots that we did. So each of these we would go to and measure a bunch of different things, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So as I mentioned, we had 2 field sites, Groton State Forest, which is out in Groton, and Mud Pond out in Greensboro. So Northeast Kingdom, very beautiful forests, except for Groton. Doesn't matter, you'll learn. So like I mentioned, we completed a bunch of different forest measurements, including overstory trees, saplings, seedlings, forest wood material, and herbaceous vegetation, and about 200 total plots. So we finished right in time in the summer. And these 3 photos at the bottom are 3 highlights from the summer. So this is my cohort from Dakota. In the Groton clear cut, 15-acre clear cuts. Before the clear cut, this was a vernal pool, and then still retained the water and the qualities of that after the cut. There are a bunch of, they're like millions, not millions, so like a ton of tadpoles down there. And then that in the middle was the biggest tree found all year. It's like 83-centimeter sugar maple. That was just massive. You can't really tell from the picture. It's huge. And then on the right is the only widespread non-native orchid in New England. It's the Broadview Telberin, and that was everywhere at our Mud Pond site, especially on our last day. It was just everywhere in your story. Just really with those. Key takeaways: number 1, coordination, cooperation, and the passion of researchers, field techs, and partners was just astounding. Like the amount of collaboration and coordination that it took to get all this research coming together was really impressive. Going off of that, research is essential in order to maintain healthy, resilient, and productive forests for both human and non-human stakeholders. And going off of that even further, field work, the grunt work of research is also critical and very behind the scenes. So you don't really think about what's going into the data figures. There's a lot of hours, a lot of sweat and blood and stuff going into that. But it's also really fun. We've got the smiles on our faces, even in the rain. Thinking about DEI, one major thing is restoring the forests to kind of how they were before we took control of them. So kind of righting wrongs to the past. And specifically, evaluating strategies for ash resilience as a wake of emerald ash borer, because the Benaki people, the black ash is really important to their cultural heritage for things like basket weaving. And in the decision-making process, incorporating multiple perspectives and stakeholders in the decision-making process. What I'm going to do with this, I'm going to do a GIS project and map kind of where there are desirable versus undesirable species. So basin and fern is the main concern because it's really competitive for light and root space for regeneration trees. So on the left and on the bottom right, that's just all basin and fern everywhere. We want something more looking like in the middle, just pin cherry, really special species. Yeah.
My name's Abigail, and this summer I worked at the UVM greenhouse and the Aiken solarium, upkeeping the plants there. That's kind of just what I already said. So I spent most of my summer working with integrated pest management, which is sort of the use of certain insects to combat pests on plants as an alternative to pesticides, which is especially important for organic growing. In terms of like sort of day-to-day stuff, I would scout for pests every day. I would water and upkeep the plants, keep them fertilized, just sort of did day-to-day cleaning, sweeping, inventorying. Some of the stuff in Aiken has not been inventoried in years. Organized displays, and I made a plant guide that's in the solarium if you ever want to go check that out. In terms of like the ecological and social impacts of maintaining organic growing in a greenhouse and in the solarium, most of the greenhouse plants are used for research here at the Plant and Soil Science Department, and that research is used to better agricultural communities here in Vermont and elsewhere in the United States. So by keeping these plants alive and keeping them healthy so that they can be used for research, it is sort of indirectly benefiting these agricultural communities. In addition, making sure the Aiken solarium is sort of upkept and looking pretty, it attracts new students to the Rubenstein school. So more future conservationists and such. Just sort of stuff, those key takeaways that I had, stuff that I learned was how, like one thing I kind of thought was that each plant has its own, like every day you water it this much or every other day you water it this much, but in reality, you just sort of have to like get to know the plant, to vibe check the plant basically, sort of see what it needs. And then also using beneficial organisms as means of pest control, pests, and also like sort of types of pests, you know, mealybugs, aphids, stuff like that. So tips for future interns, if you're working at the greenhouse or in any sort of more independent bee-based plant stuff, bring headphones because a lot of it is just sort of sitting there weeding or watering or looking at leaves for really microscopic bugs. And make sure you wear clothes that are willing to get really dirty and or bleached. I had a shirt that like almost half of it burned off because it was like covered in bleach. Ask questions and listen to the details of the people who work at the greenhouse. I feel like they often get sort of pushed to the side a little bit because you see all these beautiful plants, but they're really knowledgeable and they know a lot about what they do. And, you know, also listening to them is what keeps you from killing the plants and the bugs. Yeah. The highlights of the experience was using the power washer was my favorite. I just sort of like, I did cut my foot with it once, but that was fine. Getting to communicate with the different research labs was also really cool. I actually work at one of them. And it was really nice to be able to see the sort of behind the scenes communication that goes on between labs and the greenhouses that raise the plants. Constantly being at war with potato aphids. I think we moved those things around the greenhouse like 3 or 4 different times. And then sort of learning, I'm a wildlife biology major, and so in wildlife management, you kind of don't want to introduce one species to get rid of the other because it can lead to a lot of other consequences. But I learned that that's not really the case with insects. Like for some reason, it just works better with them. It's
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. In the summer, I did an internship at the Nantucket Land and Water Council, which is on Nantucket Island, which is located 20 miles off the shore, south shore of Cape Cod, in Massachusetts. I worked all around the 14-mile island. So I lived where that little house sign is, and I biked all around like a crazy person, getting to all my research sites. For the Nantucket Land and Water Council, I'll move on. Yeah, the Nantucket Land and Water Council actually underwent a name change this summer, which I got to experience. They used to just be the Nantucket Land Council, and as someone doing water research for them, this was really cool to experience. They're a nonprofit advocacy organization, really small group. There's 4 year-round staff members, so that was fun too. That's okay. These were my primary roles and jobs this summer. I worked on the water quality project on Nantucket Island, which was monitoring for various different physical, chemical, and cyanobacteria related factors in 3 ponds across the island that were under researched by the organizations that owned them. I also monitored for the town for harmful algal blooms. I processed, so our little rain collecting center for the National Atmospheric Deposition Program, which is a worldwide program, and I sent them little water samples in the mail every week. And then I also conducted some independent research that I've been told to keep under wraps a little bit because it involves very rich people and environmental crime. But I am kind of I looked into some gray water pollution from yachts potentially. I did so many other things on the island over the summer. I helped out with eelgrass restoration, which meant snorkeling and scuba diving some days. I did biodiversity weed pulls, volunteering on the island. I volunteered to band birds, songbirds, which was so fun. I did USGS well monitoring. I just had a great old time doing everything I could get my hands on. I also helped out with advocacy work, which is probably the biggest takeaway that I got from the whole program, was being able to work on advocacy in a local community that also experiences like huge tourism effects. Millionaires and billionaires are known to romp around Nantucket in the summer. I saw Bill Belichick's house. Cool. He actually, when he divorced his wife, he didn't want to lose the house, so she got the house, but then he just bought 2 houses down. So he actually owns 2 houses on the same strip that are like in total like worth $5 million, which is so fun for them. So I think when I think about like DEI at a place like Nantucket, it's hard to like really wrap my mind around where to start because it is such a millionaire's playground. But getting into the nitty gritty of this like policy and advocacy work, getting to go to court to work towards affordable housing while also contributing to conservation on the island was really valuable. I would say my advice is for any field job or somewhere new where you might experience culture shock like I did is patience, adaptability, maybe asking clarifying questions about where you're going to be living during the interviewing process on a really wealthy island, and to apply for jobs. Like I was so excited about this job and I had such a blast, and running with that passion is what I would recommend. I think that's all I have. Yeah.
Your video separately. So just hold with me for a second here.
Hello, my name's Connor. I've been for sports, just bike shop in East Perth, Vermont. I have a little video I put together of what I did basically on a day-to-day basis.
Sorry, Connor. Share screen.
What I do, I've always cross track and you bike on top until we riding on the road that day. When I get to work, clock in, check upstairs to see what kind of breakfast we have going in and out today. It's important to make sure that all the bikes are ready to go out. We're prepared for all bikes that are coming back to come back. So just look around, make sure all those bikes are ready. Then I head on downstairs, and if any customers need help with their bikes, I help them out, start getting them back right on the trail. I'll do that for a few hours, and then I'll take lunch around noon or after that. And featured here is OJ's hard-boiled egg eating technique. He even has a holder to his hard-boiled egg, and he can apply salt to that very effectively. It's used to here. It may not be the most hygienic or the most attractive you've ever seen, but I've done it, suppose. Look at that smile. But back to work it is. He's working on some more bikes. Some rentals come back. Gotta clean those and get them back upstairs for the end of the day. And that's my day.
I just like to touch on a few more things that I wasn't able to cover in the video. So my work really helped tourists in Vermont and over the Northeast Kingdom enjoy nature around East Perth. Learned a lot of things like how to work with customers and help keep trails that were around the shop and around the area in good condition, especially with all the flooding that happened this summer. And of course, I learned how to work on bikes. I really enjoyed my coworkers and shop rides, really helped bond us as a community, and was a really enjoyable experience. Everyone at the shop, no matter age or gender or race, was treated equally, and that was very comforting back for me. Very comfortable place to work. Everyone was included in any after work activities, which helped make it feel like more of a shop, more of a community, and not just a workplace. This was a very informative and beneficial experience that I hope that you all did appreciate. Thank you.
Brady, real quick. Hey Brady, would you mind muting your microphone, please? Sorry, thank you. Okay. Look at this. A little bit of an awkward transition, but I got it. Oh, I don't got it. Sorry. There we go. Okay, great. Perhaps. The internet is slow down here. I feel bad if you have class in this room and you're like, yeah, I know. All right. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go.
My name is Annika, and I worked in Belize over the summer with the Turn of Actual Sustainability Association. Oh, it's all messed up, but that's okay. I was working in Calabash Key, which is a really tiny island off the coast of Belize City, and this atoll called Turnif, and it's part of a marine reserve that was started in 2012, so it's pretty new, and it's also privately managed by the Turn of Actual Sustainability Association. And then they're this really cool nonprofit that was directly created to manage and protect and sustain the day-to-day activities in the communities and the environment and ecosystems within the atoll. And so they have three main areas. Oh, So they have science, which is really focused on improving our knowledge of the reef and the ecosystem. They have enforcement, which is focused on patrolling and like alongside law enforcement, making sure everyone is doing what they're supposed to. Aquaculture, which is focused on implementing like livelihood programs for fishing communities, as there's a lot of restrictions within the MPA. And then also ecotourism and education, which is focused on facilitating that human to nature connection. So for science and monitoring, this one was super important because it definitely, it tells us a lot about what we need to do in the environment, what we need to do in the ecosystem and the reef itself. And it taught me a lot about how important monitoring is in creating and sustaining environmental policy within these small areas. And then enforcement, this is me working with lobster because it was lobster season when I was there. But enforcement was super cool. All of the officers on Turnif are fisheries officers. They're kind of like game and boarding officers like here. And we went around basically every day. We went on patrols and we looked at skiffs, we looked at vessels, we looked at fishing camps and everything in between. And we kept track of their catches and made sure that they were where they were supposed to, because there's certain areas where you cannot fish along the Atoll. And then aquaculture, this one was definitely a huge one for me. I have a minor in agroecology, so this one was super cool. Basically, I took care of the seaweed farms, which is this new program being implemented all throughout Belize. And it's focused on creating supplementary lifestyles for fishing communities. And it provides a lot of alternative sources of income, and also it's a cargo sink and it's a diverse ecosystem for a lot of these fish. So it's like a triple win. And then ecotourism and education. This was something I was super interested in because it's really focused on that human to nature connection. And ecotourism is just so important, especially in Belize, where tourism is most of the country's income. And tourism brings a lot of revenue to coastal areas. In the education, we gave blue talks, which you can see here, where they were sort of like natural resource TED talks to all the resorts there. And then why do the work? It's super important. We were revitalizing communities. We created a scholarship fund for fishing communities and their kids to continue education past the 6th grade, because it's only actually a 35% completion rate for secondary education. And then key learnings, working with and for the environment. You have to understand and learn from nature in order to work for it. Importance of community-based conservation. So many Native people and the Mayan people within Belize brought so much to TASA and ensured their success and the true impact of our actions. Small actions can lead to big results. And then tips for future interns: ask questions, come with a hungry stomach, set goals, and try everything.
I'm Emily, and my summer internship was with Stacy Davis School of Engineering. Kind of skip to the next one. And one more. So the first thing, what is SCE? It's a subcontractor hired by the cities in the greater Boston area. And basically we help the municipalities stay within the MS4 standards for the state of Massachusetts. So basically this is like a set of parameters for how much contamination they're allowed to have going into their water bodies. So for equity and diversity, Massachusetts also requires all of the public work departments for almost every city to hire a certain percentage of their work to be done by female or minority owned companies. So Stacy is the owner and starter of this business, and also it's almost 100% female employed. So the big thing for me, like coming from rural New Hampshire, I had no clue that sewers and storm drains were different things, but they're totally different pipelines. So your sewers are all your wastewaters from all your buildings, your laundry, your sinks, your toilets. All of it goes to a water treatment plant, and then it's treated for all the chemicals and diseases that it might have. Whereas storm drains, it's all collected in these catch basins, which is pictured right there, and it's completely untreated and dumps directly into all of your water bodies. So in order to keep that water going into the water bodies, clean as possible, we do IDDE, or illicit discharge detection and elimination. So basically what we do is you open the manhole. We have a 30-foot pole that goes down with the Dunkin' Donuts cup duct taped to the end. We take the sample and it's measured for ammonia, chlorine, pH, conductivity, and a bunch of other parameters. And if we get a high positive or a high hit, it's flagged. And then in that area, we do dye testing. So this is kind of like the IDE process. So this is mutant mass, and these are the purple ones are the storm drains, and these are the sewers. And it's people GIS that we use, and then lab samples, and then these are all contaminated storm drains. So the green is green dye, which is sewage going into storm drains. So then dye testing is kind of a simple concept. Basically, we take green or red dye, pour it down toilets, sinks, or put it in a washing machine, and you stand over the sewer and the storm drain, and you look down the both and look for the color. And then these are like the examples of the color here. And basically, if you see it in both of them, you have an infrastructure issue or infiltration issue. If you see it in just the storm drain, it's completely illicit. The piping is completely wrong, and the city needs to be warned, and they have 24 hours to start and initiate to fix it. And if you see it in none of them, then it could be also a piping issue, and we do the dye testing. And this is my favorite part. Outfall screening is kind of fun because you kind of got to walk in the woods, look for outfall. So this is Boston Harbor. That's the outfall right there. So we take a sample of that, do our water test kit, and then if it comes back positive or high positive, then we alert the city, and then they might do dye testing for that drainage area. These are just some fun pictures of outfalls, some of the people that I worked with, and most of them are in Boston. And this is dry weather work, which is basically just when it's not raining. So these are all water test kits, and all of our test kits are color comparators. So we do indicator with the water sample, and then compare it to the others. Some more dry weather work. We did samples from catch basins as well as the storm drains, and then also town outfalls. And these are just like fun pictures. We dye tested hardwood, which is really cool, but you have to stand in the road for 5 hours. It's kind of annoying. A lot of rats, but they're like kind of cute and not as scary as you'd think. And some more fun pictures. Nick and Colin, I worked with them a lot. They're actually UVM alumni. So I put that in there. And this is like the favorite storm drain that I saw in the entire summer because it was like next to the railroad tracks in Boston, and it was completely uncovered and unmaintained. And then for future interns, start the process early. I applied last minute and was very thankful to get this internship, but I did apply like 10 minutes before the deadline. And you get out of it what you put into it, and definitely try new things, because now I have a passion for sewers that I did not think would have.
And so this summer we had an internship with the Colchester Planning and Zoning Department. I'm Jake.
Right. Yeah, we worked for the town of Colchester, and we were kind of brought in to focus on some of the bigger projects that the town really wants to implement, but doesn't quite have the staffing capabilities to do on their own. So we were kind of looking at how to implement larger plans and larger projects that they wanted to get done.
Yeah, so continuing on that, our role, we had a bunch of things, as you can see, but the main project that we focused on that we got to work on together, which was really cool, was the open space plan. And in doing so, we looked at other towns for inspiration and guidance, looked at their regulations and ordinances. We conformed to state regulations, and then we also mapped open space, important ecological sites, recreation sites, and a bunch of other things that basically encompass all the open space in Colchester. And this project was really important because the last open space plan that they have is from 2000. So it's pretty old. It's over 20 years old. So it was really helpful for us to make an outline, town survey, and create some GIS maps that they could use in the next couple of years to finalize a new plan. And a few of the other things is parking regulations, food truck ordinances. We attended the Development Review Board and Planning Commission meetings, which was cool to see. Track permit statuses, went on inspections in person, organized documents like minute meetings and agendas, and made some town surveys.
Yeah, and so building off that, the impact of our work, again, the creation of the starting documents for them to create the open space plan was a big part, just given how outdated it was. And with that, we started doing a bunch of the initial parts of how do we have the correct outreach to folks to make sure that we're getting a good understanding of the town's values and what they want out of open space, because that can look different for every community. And then one of the biggest parts that Jake really stewarded was updating of the mapping. Again, because their plan was from 2000, a lot of the open space has changed, and a lot of the important ecological sites have shifted. And so just kind of having a new base for the town to work with to guide their future document creation was a really important step.
Yeah, and some key learnings. We saw a local government function. Very intricate, a lot of moving parts, but it was really cool to be right in there, right in the heart of it. We also honed our research skills. I know we've done a lot of research in the Rubenstein classes, but it was cool to do it in a professional setting and see how it differs in that way. Like I said, familiarity with state and local regulations. We also gained experience working with BioFinder, the Vermont A&R Atlas, parcel viewer map, all that type of stuff to use, which helped with GIS and mapping, which is also a great experience, as other groups have said.
Yeah, and again, the connection to DEI, as a local government, we had to adhere to all state regulations and laws. And so with Act 154, the environmental justice law, we had to make sure that any proposals that we were putting forward to our bosses at the office did adhere to those. And a big component to that is accessibility to open space and ensuring that there aren't gaps in which communities are in close proximity to open space, which communities have easy access to them and have the means of transportation to get there. And so we looked at ways of making sure that when they write the new open space plan, they're considering all of the residents of Colchester. And again, we just wanted to keep in mind the option that best suits the needs of everyone in the community, especially since, again, those have shifted a lot over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and then some of the highlights of the experience, definitely connecting material that we've learned in class to real world problems. It was great to have the experience from Rubenstein and all the research we've done projects and bringing that in to the office at Colchester, so we weren't going in totally blind. It was a nice space to have. Also working in a fun and social office space. I know because COVID, a lot of stuff hasn't been in person, a lot of stuff has been online. So to be able to go into the office every week and work with our staff, who was super friendly, and our boss, Kathy Ann, who made us feel very comfortable and welcomed. That was amazing. Also having flexibility in deciding what to research. That was also thanks to Kathy Ann right in the beginning of the internship. She provided us with a bunch of projects and tasks to do, and she said that we could pick what we wanted to do and what interested us, so we didn't have to work on anything that we didn't like, which makes working a lot more fun. And also, yeah, just gaining real working experience in a job setting, invaluable, great to have, and showed us what a future could look like.
Yeah, and then just a couple tips for future interns. Again, with the flexibility, it's like digging into the projects that really interest you. I know Jake came into the project or into the internship with a bunch of not necessarily mapping experience, but a desire to learn more about mapping and building off the foundations of class. And so he really went in that direction. And I took more of like the regional planning and how do we integrate ideas from other towns into Colchester and those moving pieces. So tailoring it to what you want, keeping it open-minded and willing to learn. Again, for most internships, just being open to what's happening in the office. And then asking questions. Our office only had 4 people working in it. And so it's really easy to go up to people and ask for advice on what to do and really get to know them. Thank you.
So I'm Lauren. I spent my summer working as a wildlife conservation intern in Klamath National Forest. So I was based out of McDowell, California, which is a town of 26 people, 20 minutes south of the Oregon border with California. My ranger station and quarters were located there, but I worked almost an hour south within the 2021 Antelope Twin-Inch Fire burn footprint. So I just thought this was really interesting and very pertinent to what I was doing. So the Karuk are the people who are indigenous to the area I was living in and working in. In 1905, their territory was declared public land by the U.S. government. And eventually in the 1970s, they were able to purchase their own land back from the U.S. government. In 1979, U.S. recognized them as a separate governing body, but the process of gaining actual influence back was and still is really challenging. So the U.S. Forest Service and USDA state that the Karuk are consulted whenever U.S. Forest Service projects are going on in the area. And so the project I was working with involved that. So my main project was to survey for northern spotted owls.
which are endangered species of owls that live exclusively in that area. So NSO, or Northern Spotted Owl surveys, involve both daytime and nighttime surveys. Daytime involves excessive hiking through potential owl territory. We visually scan for owls, we call for owls, we mouse owls, which is when you hold a live mouse up on a stick and you wait for an owl to come and get it. And then nighttime surveys, they start at sunset, go till midnight. And you drive through owl habitat, play a recording, and wait for a response. So the whole reason we were doing this is because the Forest Service is a subset of the USDA, which is very concerned with timber. And so the burn we were working in is a very valuable timber resource. So we had to, because of the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Agency or something like that. I can't remember what it stands for. Essentially, if there's even a single northern spotted owl present, you can't log there. And if there are no owls, you can. So that was the main purpose of our job. But then also just adding to historic data as well. They've been collecting data on the owls since the 1980s. So we're continuing that. So this was like the #1 highlight of my summer. I got to assist in raptor banding with a graduate student out of Cal Poly Humboldt. So we worked with multiple species, but especially the Swainson's hawk over on the right. So we got to assist with all kinds of things, banding, data collection, handling, etc. And then I also just got to work in the most beautiful areas. These are both pictures from work days. But what made it so much better was the people I was working with. Those are the same exact locations, but with people I cared about and had fun working with. And so there's just some more pictures of fun things I was able to do this summer. There's survey up in the top left, cave exploration bottom right, more raptor banding, nighttime adventures, etc. And then my main takeaways, I listed a bunch, but for time's sake, I'll cover my main 3. So getting outside your comfort zone. I grew up and I've lived my entire life in Vermont. And this summer I just decided to go to California. I saw this job and I was like, that is really cool. So I went and I did it. And I lived on my own for 3 months in a 26-person town. I also went out there thinking, this is the Forest Service. I'm going to have to be perfect. This is the government. They're going to expect perfection. Everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. It just gave me so much more confidence in myself and my ability to go forward. And then my third and I think most important takeaway is just having fun with it. Field work can be really hard. It can be tough. It can be long hours. I work 10-hour days until midnight. But if you just do your best to have fun with it, think of the good things. It is really something worth doing. So, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elaina, and this summer I interned with Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, specifically as a solid waste management outreach intern. So what I did, I worked partly remotely and partly in person in Montpelier, where the Department of Environmental Conservation offices were. And I did outreach and education around recycling, composting, and special waste. So that was mostly attending farmers markets across the state and just talking to people in local communities and answering their questions about waste. I also did a waste reduction challenge over the course of July. And then I just got to do other cool, fun learning opportunities. I got to visit the only landfill here in Vermont, which was super eye-opening and a little overwhelming, but really cool. I went to retreat days, and I also did work around electronic waste. So farmers markets, I coordinated with market managers and solid waste management entities, or SWMEs, to attend their events and their markets and ask what specifically they would really like me to get out there, whether it's about bears or like batteries, whatever it may be. So I attended farmers markets in all of those places. Then my waste reduction challenge, I specifically worked around food waste. So every week I was doing like 4 to 5 different things to reduce my food waste, from making basics like granola bars that melted because my apartment was 90 degrees, to washing your strawberries and produce well. Yeah. So impacts, highlights, and takeaways. I really just got to work with local communities in Vermont, which was really cool. And we I tried to pick places that hadn't been visited by people and that might not necessarily have gotten a lot of this information about the details about recycling and composting. Specifically in electronic waste management, we had a lot of like flyers and things that were translated into different languages and trying to reach out to those communities who might have been passed over. I got to answer just the public's questions about a confusing topic. I still get like, can I recycle this? Where does this go? So I got a lot of questions about that. And then I also got to help people impacted by flooding over the summer. That kind of happened at mid-internship. So all of my waste reduction challenge, I was like posting on their Facebook page. So we had to pause that for like a month and a half while we just gave tips about what to do with just overwhelming amount of waste from flooding. I got to talk to people about that. And then highlights, the landfill visit was really amazing. Just working with smaller communities in the Old North End and Virgin are two of my favorites. Just local people who come to the farmers markets every single week and talking to them. Experience working in the state agency, that's something I could see for myself in the future. And then just seeing Vermont. And then takeaways, understanding how the waste system works. I had no idea how complex it was and how many different layers there are to it, how state government works, and also specifically how they're working on DEI and social justice. The Department of Environmental Conservation has an environmental justice department that sent out flyers, and I got to meet and work with a couple of them, emailing, cold calling, those kinds of things. And then tips for future interns, I have a bunch, but start reaching out to events as early as possible. That was my biggest kind of sticking point, and being very persistent and just like emailing people like 5 times. Please, can I come to your farmers market? Yeah, be willing to ask questions and things will go wrong, and just be adaptable.
Right, we're gonna take a 2-minute body and snack break, just 2 minutes. And we'll get going in exactly 2 minutes. Starting off with Elise. All right, everyone, we're gonna start with Elise.
I was in Minnesota as a Mississippi River Fellow. Which is the Mississippi Park Connection. It's specified for 18 to 25-year-olds because they kind of noticed that they're really for college-age students in the area. And it's specifically also for people to identify as BIPOC or underrepresented groups. And then it's about 320 hours. And like the goals are just to kind of explore all the different parts of what it means to work with the National Park Service and nonprofits and partners. So I'll touch on it more, but my summer is focused on like certain parts of education, community, and then natural and cultural resources. And so overall, the Mississippi Park Connection is a nonprofit friends group for the National Park Service in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So it's 72 miles along the Mississippi River, and they chose it there because it's, I guess, where the only waterfall in the Mississippi River is, and it's also where the Mississippi River goes through all its changes. And so it's just kind of focusing on the water quality there and how important it is. And so for education, I had my own specific education opportunities. Within the first week, I got CPR and first aid certified. They also did paddle training, which is super fun. They took us out on 90-degree weather and told us to jump out of a canoe and then flip it back over and get back in, and with the kayak. And then I had experiences with professionals in the field, such as like the Minneapolis Park and Rec, which is kind of almost like their own government to organize everything, and they work with the city government. And I also had an interview and resume workshop specifically for like US government jobs. But I also worked the summer camps to help educate kids or the St. Paul Public Schools for credit recovery and getting kids outside of the classroom and learning in the outdoors. And then I worked at doing tours in business centers. I also did community. I hosted a BIPOC event at the end. That's kind of like a wrap-up event, a BIPOC in the outdoors event. I also did do blog posts and help with outdoor events, fundraising events, and like some partnerships and collaborations. And then natural and cultural resources, there's a lot of indigenous partners that are in the area, specifically the Dakota and Ojibwe. And that we got a lot of feedback, but we also had the opportunity to learn from them, like plant IDs. We went on some plant ID walks in native land. We also worked on biotech surveys, which is keep the rangers who are working behind the scenes to help solve problems like a beaver problem because they have no natural predators. We also worked at habitat restoration events which were usually pulling invasive species, and I did 7 of those. And then and some of my key things were that I really connected with the natural area and history and also how humans interact with it. And I really got an interest in foraging and plant ID and growing my knowledge there. And then some of the best memories was, like I said, paddle training. We also did fossil hunting, which is really cool. And then some tips were just control what you can control. I had days where it was like, felt like 105 degrees and we had to wear long pants and hike in the sun. Or just like dealing with ticks and poison ivy and nettle. And so just making sure you have all the sufficient things to deal with all of that and ask questions. Just a pretty photo.
There we go.
You.
I'm Elaina Shepherd. I was working this summer as the water resources intern at Watershed Consulting. So I was working at Watershed Consulting. They're a small environmental consulting firm located down by the world's tallest filing cabinet. And they specialize in stormwater management, water quality, reducing erosion and pollution. what were my responsibilities? I had a lot of them. So I was doing a lot of field work, like collecting GPS points, doing IDDE, which was talked about before. I was a visual observer for a drone flight, which was really cool. Then I was doing like a lot of GIS stuff and creating map layouts and stuff like that. So the importance and impact is like everyone needs clean water, and preventing pollutants from entering streams and lakes in the watershed is going to prevent them from getting into the lake and creating a healthy watershed and a healthy lake. And then going off of that, there are 571,000 people living in the Lake Champlain watershed, and over a third of them rely on the lake for clean drinking water. So everyone deserves access to clean drinking water and a clean lake to recreate in. So doing this work was really important and impactful, and I felt like I was making a difference. Sorry, I don't know why my slides got all screwed up, but my key learnings, I just learned a lot about stormwater management. Like this was something that I didn't really know a lot about, so that was really cool. And then illicit discharge detection and elimination, basically finding anything that's entering the stormwater system that's not supposed to be. So I did a lot of that work, which was really cool. Also, just learning that the field of stormwater management is like really complex and interdisciplinary. There were so many different people on my team with different interests, and all the community partners that we worked with. It was really cool to see everyone coming together. And then my other key learning, I learned a lot about unmanned aircraft systems like drones and stuff, which was really cool. And then highlights, probably the drone flight, which this is the drone, the Wingtra that they have. And it was at a marble quarry, which was really cool to just like walk around and explore. And then we're doing impervious surface and verification at the State House in Montpelier, which was really cool. And then just like getting to travel around Vermont and see the beauty of our state was really cool. And then my bosses and my coworkers were really awesome. Oh yeah, and then just tips for future interns, I would say be flexible. Like you never know what's going to happen, and you just got to adapt to different challenges. Keeping a positive attitude and a sense of humor is really important, especially on those hard fieldwork days. And just have fun and keep learning. Yeah. That's all I have.
I'm Lauren. This summer, I worked at the Green Mountain Conservation. So more on that. It was in Woodbury, Vermont. That's a much more zoomed in. It's right off Route 14, and that's a really pretty picture of me canoeing on the lake. So specifically what I did is I was essentially a camp counselor, but a camp counselor on everything that has to do with the environment. So I got to work with youth, usually ages 12 to 16, learning about fisheries, ecology, forestry, like you name it, we were talking about it. And I basically just got to work with game wardens, foresters, biologists, and probably experienced working with about 540 different kids throughout the entirety of the summer, which is a lot. Yeah, so these are just a couple examples. Like in the top right, we have a forester who came, and then a state fisheries biologist in the center, and then that's just a really pretty picture of our rock garden. So this work meant a lot to me because I'm really interested in environmental education, and it was just amazing to see kids get to connect to the outdoors for the first time. So these two pictures with like the nets and the buckets were in my favorite class called aquatic ecology, where we just got to look for macroinvertebrates, and just seeing kids really take an interest in that for the first time is just the best thing that you could ever see. And yeah, I think it was just amazing to get to learn and apply wildlife conservation. So this is two parts. This is also during aquatic ecology. You can see me in there. And if you click again,
we get a little bit dirty during this class because we explore in a mud pit. And the really amazing story from this is that there were some kids who didn't want to get in the mud pit, and I really encouraged them to. And once I got everybody in the mud, we were looking around, they were like, I'm so glad that you told me to do that, because I don't think I would have done that in any other circumstance. And there's so many things I would say is my highlight of camp, but I had to pick just one, and that's what I chose. So that's me with the frog that the campers named Bumblebee, by the way. My key learnings, a lot had to do with social ecological systems thinking, of how humans and nature are so intertwined, and just how I got to basically teach kids like, hey, you have an impact on the world around you and the environment that you live in, as well as just being so immersed in Vermont's natural world and learning about, you know, animals, birds, trees, you name it. As well as just like really getting to establish interpersonal relationships with all. And then it was not a job I could have done alone. Those are all my coworkers. They were definitely the best support system. And if I had to give any piece of advice for going into a job like this, is you have to have patience. Kids say the darndest things, so you gotta have patience. And also just, it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, but you have to be willing to kind of, you know, put yourself out there. And I experienced a lot of stuff that was just nothing I would have ever imagined myself doing this summer. But yeah, it was really great.
So I'm Jacob, and I somehow found myself in Greenland this past summer. So Greenland is here, Iceland is here, they're not to be confused. And I was on the western coast in the capital, Nuuk. The red squiggly lines chaotically drawn show where I got around to by boat and by foot. And this is the kind of national monument, Salo Mountain. Some pretty pictures. So I was working in the Greenland Climate Research Center, which is an entity within the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources. And I went to be a research assistant and a lab tech for Caroline Bouchard. But once I got there, I kind of expanded to voluntarily being a field tech for Lawrence Muir, an oceanographer, and a land of fjord project, which is a co-op between Denmark and the Greenland Research Council. So this is the first ecosystem I've studied under Caroline. She is a pelagic ecologist, but I looked at polar cod for her, which essentially is studying the northward migration due to warming waters pushing them north, pushing their northward boundary. So I collected DNA, gonads, otoliths, which you'll see on the next slide. They're little ear stumps, which you can determine their age with. And from that, I did maps, DNA analysis, age determination. Yep, that's about it. So these are the otoliths. They're made of calcium. You can vaguely see on this one the rings. So the annuli are the rings, and going outwards, this one is probably about 3 years old. The oldest I saw was 6, which is pretty old, but it's not the oldest you would expect. Here's a phylogenetic tree that I helped make, and this is an age chart. So we were just essentially trying to determine how climate change is impacting the species, which is important for the broader Arctic ecosystem. Atlantic cod do not provide as much nutritional lipids for mammalian species, and there's a coevolution. Atlantic cod did not co-evolve with polar bears, seals, etc. So this research had broader impacts onto how climate change is going to affect the overall ecosystem, not just the pelagic one. This is the second ecosystem I was looking at. So there are 2 types of freshwater uptake into the fjords. Oh, that's fast. There's from the land glaciers and the water glaciers. Sorry, I'm a bit muddled now. So when you have fresh water coming in from the land, it's very sedimenting with it. So you get these really rich ecosystems from an increase in plankton. And then when you have water coming in from the below the water column, you get an uptake of nutrients from the benthos, which kind of increases the turbidity and creates really depleted ecosystems. So Lorenz and the Land of Fjord project was looking at the disparity between these two takes. These are some pictures I took. This is Sam, great friend of mine. And there's a CBT, we use it when we were out in the fjords. There's a polka bar I frequented. The senior citizens there really know how to dance. Got to bushpack and go on some treks. I learned a lot about the Arctic and how the rest of the world's kind of impacting it. Well, not all of our, that's an exaggeration, but a lot of the air pollution and water pollution from southern latitudes kind of just ends up in the Arctic and sits there for a very long time. So getting to learn about that was neat. Got the dog sit for Caroline. Very cute dog. Some more pictures. There's a caribou vaguely in there. And some tips. Look for funding early. I wish I had more funding. Bring a change of clothes. It's cold. I did not take a lot of pictures of fish. Didn't want to get fish guts all over my phone. This is a particularly nasty one. There's some capelin and some guts from the cod I dissected. And just reach out. These big institutions can seem scary, but if you just send an email, they're friendly people. They'll get back. And as a side note, when you are going to these places you don't hear a lot about or that you have never been to, take the time to educate yourself. If you fabricate an idea about them that is not true whatsoever, it is damaging to them. It holds them to an unrealistic standard, and it can do damaging things to their culture and the interactions you have with their community. In Greenland in particular, they are trying to establish themselves as a global player. And if everyone who goes there has this idea of them as an isolated kind of outpost, and a German who had that idea, set of opinions, they can just do damaging things to them. So take the time to educate yourself. Vital. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, my name is Ellis Addleman, and I was the UAS intern here at the Spatial Analysis Lab at UVM. So Salo's been at UVM for over 20 years now, and the drone team was created about a decade ago, responding to the need for emergency drone response in the area. Some highlights for the UAS team and the internship position have been being the first to respond to trail derailments in the United States, the Assured Safe program, where we work with the FAA to help teach local first responders how to use drones and all the software that they would need. We also do a lot of wide-ranging emergency response, and also our FEMA partners, where we work with them pretty actively. Also, precision agriculture is a big project we do, where we work with local soil scientists and farmers to monitor the health of their crops throughout the summer and fall. We also work with harmful algal bloom monitoring, which if you ever get notifications about the beaches on Lake Champlain, so we take pictures to see kind of what the situation is to keep everyone updated. We also do landslide management and make a lot of elevation models and canopy cover models. So most of my summer was spent on emergency flood response. Here's one of the pictures we took kind of during peak flooding. The flooding event began on July 11th, and then for most of July and August, we spent almost all of our time and resources working to collect data. Because of our strong connections with state officials, our wide range of knowledge and specialized equipment, we were able to gather a bunch of data on peak flooding and to help with damage assessment. All this data was then sent to FEMA, which, because we were able to do it so quickly, helped get relief funds to the people who needed it most as quickly as possible, so they didn't have to send out surveyors, which would have delayed relief funds. It was really great to be able to actively help with such a big disaster and to meet a lot of people in Vermont that were really affected by this. Here's another picture that our team took during the big floods. And here's another one. So I went into this internship with absolutely no experience with drones or any of the software needed. But before I started, I did take the Part 107 certification, which gave me kind of like a broad overview of what was to come and allowed me to fly drones commercially. As soon as I started, I got to learn about all of our drone equipment, which we have a lot, so it was really important to learn how to use it, how to store it, and how to manage it. I also got to learn about all the different software we use, which is important for flight planning and in the actual process of flying the drones. And also because, especially this summer with the flooding events, we got a lot of data, so it was really important to learn how to analyze them in different software programs, and also how to store and manage it and get to send it out in a professional and quick manner. And collaborative work and public outreach is really important in emergency response events, and public outreach was definitely a big highlight because I got to go out and talk to the people of Vermont. And thank you to the team. Drone pilots, less than 8% of all drone pilots are non-men, so it was really great and an honor to work with such a diverse group of people. And also most of the team is made up of current or former UVM students who were interns as well. So it's really cool to learn from people who I know were in my position before. And some tips for future interns is to ask some questions, be open to feedback, and also don't think you have to know anything about drones to start, because I didn't. All you need is passion and curiosity.
So, my name is Wyatt, and this summer I started an internship at the Long Island Game Farm. So, the Long Island Game Farm is really integrated into the local culture in the area, though I wouldn't know much about it because I moved there pretty recently. But it's been open since 1970, and it's kind of just kept growing and growing and growing, and it's been family owned the entire time. So it's a really great place to be, and a lot of people in the area really enjoy it. As you can see, I spent a lot of my time with goats this summer. Besides that, there's a couple other roles at the game farm. There's one that I spent a fair amount of time with that holds the entire place together, which is called Trails, which involves bringing feed to whatever animal station that needs it, doing upkeep, such as landscaping, woodworking, cleaning, and every other kind of task you can imagine. That's what the job is. Another one was giving pony rides to kids, but that also involved cleaning the ponies, their pens, feeding them, and learning how to interact with horses, which is new for me because I don't like horses. But the place I spent the most time in was the nursery, which is where we raise and have Nigerian dwarf goats that you can come in and pet and feed milk. And that involved cleaning their pens, preparing milk for the day because they don't make milk, you have to make it as formula, and making sure that all the goats are happy and healthy. And what I thought was really important about the work is that there's kind of two sides to it. There's a people side, which involves making sure everyone understands how to interact with the animals and treat them with care and respect. And also for us, the employees, to treat everybody equally and with respect. And then there's the animal side, which is treating all the animals properly, making sure they're happy, healthy, and that both sides kind of have fun interacting with each other. A few key learnings I took away is that people can have vastly different animal experiences, even though you might think, oh, everybody kind of has a dog or at least has interacted with some. people don't know how to interact. You just have to assume that no one knows anything. And that kind of goes into the second key learning, which is patience is important. You have to keep a level head. And besides the people, goats can be really stubborn, really, really stubborn. But and the third key learning I took away was insight into my future and what I wanted to do. And now I definitely know I want to try and pursue something working with animals. A few highlights are at some point in the summer, we'd spent the whole time building an enclosure for squirrel monkeys, and we finally got them, and they're like bundles of energy. They're crazy little creatures. And another highlight is there's one goat who I'm surprised I forgot to put a picture of there, named Otis, who is the fluffiest and biggest and friendliest goat that we had this year. And every day I was working in the nursery was the best because he was there. He was super friendly. Some tips to future interns would be you get to know the staff because at most there's 10 people there on a given day. And getting to know everyone there is really important because you have to rely on each other to do your job, or else the customers don't have good experience and someone has to pick up your slack. And so getting to know them is a lot of fun because everybody wants to get to know each other. Have a good day. The second tip is to be patient, both with yourself, the animals, and the customers. That's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie. I was the Steward of JS intern with VHCB, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board this summer. So as the name implies, they work with both housing and conservation. They buy conservation easements and also fund land acquisitions throughout the state of Vermont. They work on a variety of projects. It's not all forest land. And my job was to independently monitor these properties either in person or remotely. And I would be looking for violations of the conservation easement, encroachments by neighbors, or biological information about the sites, invasive species, stuff like that. And this is important to protect the land and honor the original conservation easement for wildlife habitat, historic sites, public access to the land and ecological services. And this also creates a historical record of the baseline conditions of the land. So working with VHCP, I got to learn a lot about broadly how conservation works. And I got to attend a board meeting and get to see how conservation decisions are made. So for example, what does conserved land looks like? This is a really big one for them. Balancing wanting to keep the green landscape of Vermont and also provide affordable housing, and who's in the room making these decisions and who's not included. So yeah, key learnings. I was out by myself in the field a lot, so there was a lot of responsibility and independent problem solving that came with that role. I stopped listening to true crime podcasts. This was the highlight of the summer. I hiked Bald Mountain Trail. That was the first site I had to look at, and there was a super cool fire tower at the top. That was an amazing view. And the second site, this is Lake Willoughby, and specifically I had to monitor the beach. So I went on a hike to the beach. It was amazing. And there were lots of days like that. Yeah, tips for future intern, be prepared. It's a lot of long driving days throughout the state. Falls. This was just a stop I took along the way at the end of one of my days. Yeah, you get to explore Vermont. It's great. Thank you.
Just rolling with all the sounds about that one. All right, we have Gabby. I'm gonna do my awkward change it out here just so I can get your thing up.
I'm Gabby, and this summer I worked with the Aspen Land Trust, and I put together a little video to show what I spent my time doing.
Hi, I'm Gabi Hebert, and I spent my summer working with the Aspen Land Trust on their Goose Page Summer Conservation Internship. The majority of my time with the Land Trust was spent conducting preserve inspections with the other interns, Owen, Ben, and Ben. At every natural space we visited, we cleared and walked any and all trails, tacked up boundary markers and trailblazes, walked all the boundaries, and filled out an accreditation survey for each one that we did. On the survey, we filled out information about the condition of the preserve we were visiting, and this included existing or missing signage and boundaries, noting encroachments from neighbors, property violations, or if they're using impacting conservation values. And if the preserve is open to the public, noting if there is access to parking, the trail condition, and any safety issues. Next, we marked invasive plants we identified, habitats and ecosystems we encountered, dominant vegetation we saw, observed animal species, and lastly, the time it took, the weather conditions, the inspector names and their relationship to the land trust, and any pictures we took, including one of the property sign. The work me and the other interns did was crucially important to the future of the land trust. They're hoping to become accredited in the coming years, and to do so, they have to conduct 3 years' worth of inspections on all of their preserves. Contributing to a surveying and inspecting of over 150 preserves has taught me a few things about southern coastal Connecticut and how land trust works and what they do. Firstly, and most notably, hiking every day through Connecticut's uplands, lowlands, middleland forests, rivers, streams, wetlands, and ridgelines has encouraged my learning of so many different native and invasive species found in these natural areas. I came out of this experience being able to identify different trees, shrubs, and plants that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to before. Secondly, part of my internship was spent learning how to grow garden patches that was supposed to mimic a Miyawaki forest. The Miyawaki forest is a dense, rapidly growing forest that is supposed to mimic how a forest would grow if humans did not interact with it. Miyawaki forests provide an oasis for animals to find food and shelter in areas that have hardly any trees. They also act as a carbon sink, provide shade, provide a place to go and enjoy nature, and lower surface temperatures. The land trust plans to plant many of these Miyawaki forests in low-income neighborhoods in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where the tree canopy is among the lowest in the state. Lastly, I learned on a new level how important it is to go outside and enjoy and learn about nature as much as you can. This was a truly fulfilling experience for me. The highlight of my experience with the Aspentuck Land Trust this summer was being able to go outside every day and explore the depths of trailed and untrailed preserves. To the new interns joining Aspentuck, I say, make the most of this experience. It's truly unique and important to the future of the land trust. It might be a tough time bushwhacking through multiflora rows of greenbrier, and sure, sometimes you might fall 2 feet into a wetland or find to cross it on a fallen tree, but in retrospect, those were the best parts. I want to thank Abigail Page for funding this internship, as well as Mary L. LeMay and Lou Bakioki for granting me the position and organizing my wonderful experience with the Aspentuck Land Trust.
Video. I was also sick while I made it, so my voice sounds kind of weird.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 presentations left. I do want to acknowledge that we're at 7:36, So, but we have 5 left, so I hope you all are able to stay for all the remaining 5. Just gonna jump back to the slides now. Take a second, it's just going slow.
This is our summer with FEMC. I'm Molly. I'm Ruby. And yeah, the forest. This is the Forest Ecosystem Monitoring Cooperative, which is housed in this building on Spear Street. You probably drive by all the time. Which is, and it's made up of all 6 states in New England plus New York. Those are all the plot locations. We have green being completed, blue is retired, red is not completed, and Maine is a different crew. So they're not on our map. Yeah.
So we worked in groups of 3 to 4 technicians, and we went out each week and measured tree DBH height, looked at like different diseases, and looked at sapling and seedling, like composition too. We're responsible for like planning trips. We leave the office on Monday. We have a weekly schedule. Next, we maintain all the equipment, conduct the field work, and enter all the data into iPads while we're in the field.
This is our weekly schedule. I'll just run through it really briefly. We'd meet up at the office at like 7:30 on Monday, load it up. It would like be like packed, like you couldn't see out of any of the windows. Because they rent us like family like SUVs for the summer. Yeah, drive to the plot. It was literally like one of the plots behind the DoubleTree in Burlington. Some of them were on the other side of New York. Do plots, upload data. We would be camping 2 to 3 nights a week. So we'd kind of just do the same thing Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, we would probably get home most of the time, like Wednesday night. Thursday, we'd head back in the office, upload data, screenshots from iPads, find extra work to do, updating plot information. We'd make yummy meals. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So basically this was established in 1991 just to track forest health throughout Vermont. And it recently spread throughout all the different states. And it's basically just to learn about the forest health. And I think before this was established, the government did it every 5 years. And so our role was to do it like every year to establish, look at forest data like on a more frequent basis because forests can change really quickly.
Some key learnings were solidifying seedling identification, which is something that I hadn't really done in a lot of my classes yet. Importance of individual tree health and how that impacts the rest of the forest. So you definitely got to see a lot of unhealthy forests and a lot of awesome healthy places as well. Navigational skills, familiarity measurement tools. I was like so afraid of GPSs and all my forestry labs for the summer, and then I was like, I have to learn how to use a GPS, and it's actually like, the easiest thing ever. So that was awesome.
Some highlights, just like gaining confidence in the field. Personally, I had taken 0 forestry classes. I knew nothing. Molly had done more stuff, but I just kind of got thrown into it, and I learned a lot of species ID, lots of like damages, and just like by the end of the summer, we were measuring things super quickly. We found a really, really big tree. I think it was a white pine. Yeah. It was 113 centimeters DBH. Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things for me was just getting to travel all around Vermont. Like I grew up in Vermont and I've lived here my whole life, and we went to so many places that I've never been before. And getting to be outside, that was the best part. Like I was in the woods pretty much like all summer, just camping, hanging out with everyone, and measuring trees.
Yeah. Another like highlight, was getting to like use all these skills that I was like last year. I was like, this sucks, I hate class, and then I like was like, okay, I actually needed to learn all this stuff. yeah, getting to spend a lot of time outside, getting to meet some really cool people. There's 3 UVM students, and then everyone else had already graduated, and it was like really awesome to see people like enjoying their post grad lives, like just doing this stuff. Yeah. The FEMC is, yeah, so we did a lot of driving, which is one thing, is like, and like considering our carbon footprint, what types of vehicles we have. We have a crew in Maine, so that increases like or decreases the driving time for plots. The legal ownership of the land versus like like indigenous ownership of land. That is like something that FEMC is like in its beginning phase of considering right now. Whose land are we on? There's a lot of times where we got angry people being really scary. One time we were like pulled up in the wrong driveway and a lady came outside with a bat, which is like, yeah. So yeah, that was another thing is, yeah.
Some tips, just like be confident that your classwork and your learning at UVM like prepared you. And also in like my shoes, I had no experience. And by the end I was like, I had learned a lot. And definitely like, I was super nervous at first. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But as soon as you do a week of like 5 or 6 plots, and the way that they're like laid out, you do like 4 plots within each plot that are all the same. So you end up counting so many trees. And so definitely just like, it'll be okay. It'll all work out and you'll become super confident. And also you'll be spending a lot of time with your crew members. So just like having patience and making friends with them. I don't know, it's like 7 hours in the car, having long talks, listening to music, being silly. We had a lot of fun and it was great.
And also bouncing off what Jacob said earlier, bring more than 1 pair of clothes. Because the first week I only brought 1 shirt and everyone's like, damn, like you're such a hard ass. And I was like, I'm actually just chronically underprepared. Yeah, that was our summer.
Thank you.
So this summer, Hudson and I, we internship with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. Help out with the national river team.
So this is an EPA project that Vermont takes part in. So the EPA on like a 5-year rolling basis, they do an inventory of all the different streams, both wadeable and boatable in the US. So in Vermont, BC, with Heather and Jim, you know, they're just great people that show up to they spearhead that at the Bass Lab. And so what this project looks at are the physical, biological, human health, and chemical concerns relative to waterways. And so that could be like Enterococci indicating contamination from like human feces or phosphorus and nitrogen, pH of the water, and then looking at more biological stuff like the benthic, vertebrates, and fish communities, along with just the general physical state of the water or waterways. And it's important because this study has been going on for a while now, so they can compare past studies to the ones we do now, and it kind of indicates whether we're improving how we're treating the environment and what's getting into our waters and what directions they may want to take in the future to like further that development.
Yeah, so our role in this assessment as sampling interns, a couple days a week, we'd go out to a stream and help out with sampling the biological, the chemical, and the physical characteristics of them. So biological characteristics means we go out with an electrofisher and shock the fish, so paralyzed. Then we scoop them up, put them in a bucket. So later we come by and just categorize them by length. One's big enough to take a chunk of it, send it in for mercury testing. For chemical, we take water samples on site and we used filters and just a hand pump to get everything filtered. And then
Lots of hand pumping.
Unless you have a Ford F-150 Lightning, then you can just use electric pump. It's like we take those samples and we send them into a lab. And for physical characteristics of the streams, that's what we spend most of our time doing, where we have to wade through the whole reach of what we're sampling, measuring like tree canopy, substrate, depth, and riparian conditions.
So what did we actually do? You know, sometimes the electric fisher fishes the fish. Sometimes the electric fisher fishes you. Make sure that you don't pulse any waders, stuff like that. And then key takeaways, definitely I learned that while I like doing field work, I think 2 or 3 days a week is plenty to satiate that need. So I probably wouldn't go after a job that had that 5 days a week. I think this is a great split. Doing some lab work on the side or something.
I mean, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I had a really great time. Even when I did get shot, you know, it makes things a little exciting. And I think, you know, I'm a forestry major, and I wasn't expecting to fall in love with fish, but every time I went out on the site and I got to interact with the organisms actually living in the environments that we're sampling, you know, I think it brings a good connection to what I'm doing, and makes it pretty. That makes me feel like I'm actually making an impact on where I am.
And I definitely had no experience with fish or any of the biology stuff really going in. But they school us up with everything we need to know, and super good resources for anybody considering working at the DEC. And then apart from that, I think learning about the validity of field work, given the storage flood this summer, was pretty significant. Sometimes you're going out and showing up to a site and then look at it, decide that you're not going to do it. So you call up one of your friends and you go hang out with them while you're in the southern part of the state. It all works out. Yeah, super good time overall.
Something that I didn't realize going into this, but since it's part of a big federal project, there's a lot of different moving parts, not only including the state agencies, but also the federal agencies and the partners. Even just getting stuff shipped by FedEx can sometimes be an issue. It's that sort of stuff that you don't always realize when you go into big projects coming from smaller stuff, maybe just from the university. And to tie this into like a diversity or equal opportunity situation, I think the data taken from this, it can be really applied to all sorts of different projects going forward. This data becomes publicly available maybe 6 years after it's taken. And so this can be used in all sorts of projects, maybe just looking at like proximity of polluted streams and wealth inequalities. I think there's a lot of great opportunities that arise from having a national survey like this.
As far as tips go, definitely apply and interview for much different positions. I think that's like a super important skill to have because, you know, coming out of school, everybody knows some stuff, but the way you come across is obviously very important as well. So take that opportunity when you can. Yeah, thank you.
Storm. Greenlit presentations.
So I'm Storm, and I did my summer internship with Vermont Youth Conservation Force. So who is VYCC? They're a nonprofit based in Richmond. They're the Big Red Farm down on 89 and Route 2. And they have two main branches. One is conservation. So this is to do with trail work throughout the state. They build lean-tos and bridges and stuff in state parks. They're actually working in Campbell, South Dakota. That. The other side is the farm work. So they're part of the healthcare share program, which connects the food grown on the farm with families throughout the state whose medical professionals think they would benefit from an increase of fruits and veggies in their diet. So basically, USCC gives them a free CSA throughout the summer. In the summer, we worked with over 400 different in the state. Another big part of USCC is community education. So they host middle schoolers, high schoolers, and people throughout the community to go to the farm and work and learn about where their food comes from. What did I do? At the beginning of the summer, I did a lot of preparing the beds for planting. So pulling up the cover crops in the winter, laying out fertilizer and building these food houses for the tomatoes. And then as the summer progressed, I moved more towards harvesting. So harvesting all the food that we're growing, weeding, and maintaining everything. Did a lot of work with the tomatoes and pruning them. And then also packing the health measures. So packing all the CSAs to be shipped out every week. USDC also has a farm stand right on Route 2. So I helped man that and load it up with food, ready to go. We also had chickens on the farm. We had laying hens and meat birds. So also helped feed and water these birds, and then when the time came, process the meat birds, which was a very new experience for me, and definitely made me rethink my relationship with meat and food in general. So what I learned a lot about fertilizers, whether that's fertilizers from naturally in the soil or from chicken leftovers. And fertilizers added by hand. I also learned about how to maximize land. UICC has 14 active acres of farmland, and they really try to make the most of it. Planting different crops, using crop rotation, cover crops. I also learned about the pros and cons of working on organic farming. The quality of the produce is a lot higher, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done to making the produce, and the plants and everything, just a lot more finicky. I also learned about the chickens. I never seen a bird go from a squawking bird to a bunch of meat in 85 minutes. So that was a really new experience for me. And overall, I had a great time. Really thankful for this opportunity.
Okay, we have Madison and Liz. And Liz, I tried to format yours here, but it didn't really work.
I have it.
Are you okay if we go off Madison? Yeah, or you could email it to me and I could pull it up too. Okay.
I did it.
Yeah, I was like trying to like shorten it and like squeeze it, and then I'd be like, and so I was just couldn't get it. But say your name loud and proud because it's just Madison's name up there too, and you're definitely part of this.
I'm Liz Ye. I did.
For interns at Common Roots, which is an organic nonprofit in South.
Yeah, it's right on Spear Street.
Yeah. So this is their mission statement on their website, which is not really greatly summed up everything. Because Common Roots is like this kind of big entity. We were on the farm production side of it. So it's connecting farmers, educators, youth, and members to build a sustainable future through land stewardship. And yeah, there's programs for community, programs around regenerative soil and around habitat specifically engagement and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different programs going on.
Yeah, we did farm production, and then once a week I worked at the farm stand, which was basically like selling. It was like a farmer's market, but there was also educational programs for youth. So you could have interned to like teach little kids about like the basics of like taking care of your garden, taking care of just like the land of Vermont. And then there was also there was a farm to fork which taught you organic cooking. So the farm for fork program would use the produce we pick. So it was all of these little internships combined.
Yeah. And what we specifically did, so we did washing, pruning, harvesting, trellising, culling, putting down tarps, like truly everything, because this was a very small, there were 3 full-time farmers and then interns. So we did do just about everything, which was super exciting. So we got to see, planting it to all the way to harvesting, all the way to putting in the food shelf. A lot of process.
Yeah, the previous presenter mentioned the trellising and the hoop houses. So we did that from like the start. It was really cool. We got to see the tomatoes when they were like maybe 8 inches and then they were like 10 feet high. It was crazy.
Yeah, why this work like specifically mattered. They were a nonprofit and a lot of the food went to the kitchen and to the local food pantries and just for food justice in general. And organic farming support for soil regeneration. And yeah, for community engagement, there was a lot going on with academic studies of heirloom varieties and just engagement of sacred land, making space for that. So some key learnings. So we did a lot of tomato management, a lot of that. We did a lot of weed suppression, specifically with like tarps and a lot of and as key takeaway that I had was from worker rights. We had somebody come who was an organic food certifier, and he came and did like a little bit of interview with some of the farmers about like asking them like basically the questionnaire of like, you know, are you getting good pay? Like, and then we had a conversation about what workers' rights farmers look like in Vermont and where they were succeeding, where there was holes in that, and just having the conversation with farmers was a really interesting and a big takeaway for me.
And then another really big takeaway for like the more like law or policy or like, I guess the management behind farming is we also had a day where we had an organic, it's like a certified organic inspector come in. So like the whole week, it was like on like a Thursday. So the whole week leading up to that day, we were working on like making sure the level, like the levels of soil were right, the practices we were using. We had to use certain fertilizer, and we had to like I think Common Roots started in 2005, and there were still like some leftovers from the farm before. So pretty making sure everything's gone that wasn't certified organic. It was a really big process I never thought of.
Yeah, so some highlights. We picked a lot of strawberries, especially like at the beginning. Like there was one day, strawberries. It's crazy. And the view and location was beautiful. It was right near like the Overlook State Park, so that was like our view most days, which was incredible. We got free food because the person that was the chef would like sometimes just bring us like if there was extra of like food that we were harvesting and make like tomato soup out of, and then we'd have a bunch of tomato soup, which was awesome. And this is Phoebe, the farm dog, and she was wonderful. We loved her. Yeah, so the connections to equity, diversity, and social justice. Common Roots is like super connected with all of these themes. And again, with the academic studies they were doing, and they had a whole department of working on that. And then, yeah, the food banks and kind of their purpose is a nonprofit to serve the community in food sovereignty.
So for future interns, definitely, I think this internship, it was very kind of, you're gonna put in as much work as you're willing to put in. Because there were definitely like, the beginning of June, I was on vacation a lot. So I couldn't go a lot in June. And so for that, I like made up a ton of time in July. So it really is what you make of it. And like I said, I missed June. So I didn't get to see a lot of the beginning stages of farm production, but I was able to learn all the harvesting, or like July was like peak. So I learned a lot of reading. And it was also really rainy this summer. So like you really like, there's a lot of farming techniques you don't think of that are really basic that you're not going to consider like in the mud.
Yeah, rain boots, very important. There was a lot of rain. And even if there wasn't rain, we were using so much, like so many hoses, like wiped down barrels, like we were constantly in mud. And yeah, reaching out for funding. This Common Roots is like typically an unpaid internship, which I was like on an unpaid internship. Then I found out about funding, and it would equal out to like very good pay that it would made it possible for me to do this internship, which was awesome. So and definitely look into it if you guys are ever considering an unpaid internship.
And even though it's unpaid, we got a lot of perks. So it saved a lot from the grocery bill. So I thought it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was, actually, it was really good.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Yay, Lindsey, woo!
I'm Lindsey and I worked at Cape. That was funny. So it's based. So this was one of the things, the services we provide is the an offshore company. And I wrote so much that you not have to read all of it. Basically, it's high school students from Lynn, Salem, Boston, and Worcester are immersed into the offshore wind industry, which is booming in Massachusetts right now. We had a ton of speakers come in. We went to a ton of cool places, and these kids didn't really grow up in a school system that provides a lot of experiences for them. So it's really cool for these high schoolers to get this on like their resumes and stuff, and they're applying to college, and they also get $500 at the end because it's a big like grant funded camp. And my boss is a big believer in you have to incentivize the increase of renewable energy. So yeah, then here are some pictures from it. So they build a little turbine, and then that at the bottom are the largest turbine blades in the world right now. And they're in New Bedford going on a big offshore wind project for Vineyard Wind, which is super cool. And then I did a lot of work, me and my coworkers did a lot of work with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, also known as WHOI. So we do this big energy benchmarking report for them because it's sort of like a small campus, but it's a scientific institution. They have big vessels, so they use a lot of energy, a lot. It was horrifying, guys. I'm not even kidding. But we worked closely with Stephanie Madsen, who's the sustainability manager, and we basically did the benchmarking report and came up with solutions. And we made a central energy plant video, which was also horrifying, seeing how much gas they use. These are some pictures. That's us doing solar feasibility. This is some GIS program solar feasibility, and then that's GIS wind feasibility. Oh, and there's another picture that's not showing up, but we did a lot of like pop-ups for them with like alternative plastics and energy efficiency for the individual employees. And then this was our work with the Wampanoag tribe. So my boss Megan works very closely with the tribe and got a huge grant for them to do a bunch of solar and get EV chargers so that they can build up their own resiliency. Because obviously they do not trust the government very much. So sort of giving them their own like ownership is a big goal. And then we also did some stuff for the town of Falmouth, but it didn't really go very far. This is the high school and then some other places. And then these are some random side quests. So those are me and my other, the other interns. We made cheese. Don't really know why. We went on a big whaleboat ride and we saw all the huge, like the turbine staging area for this big offshore wind project was in New Bedford. So we got to like roll the boats out and see them, which was sick. And then these two photos are from a climate solutions tour at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. So it's really cool to see these scientists who are at the forefront of like what they're doing. Oh, never mind. So some key learnings. Each state is in a very different place with renewable energy. I also learned a lot about having to reword how you discuss renewables when conversing with people who either don't know much or tend to value the economics over the sustainability. And communication is just very important, especially when discussing like renewable projects and prices, return on investment, etc. And then my advice, I can't really see it, was just ask a ton of questions. You get surrounded by really cool people all the time in this job. Connect with people, make sure you're making connections because as I just said, the people that you meet are so cool and just learn as much as you can. Take it all in, sort of what everyone else was saying. So thank you.
All right, everyone, thanks for attending the supersized first night of the 8th annual Internship and Research Slam. We're doing it again tomorrow, so if you didn't get enough tonight, come for tomorrow. It's gonna be a great night. So thank